When people think about loss, they usually imagine losing money, losing possessions, or losing relationships. These are painful, but all of them, in some way, can be recovered. You can rebuild wealth, you can buy new possessions, you can even mend broken relationships. But there is one thing you cannot get back under any circumstance. Time. Once it's gone forever. That's why time is the most valuable and unforgiving resource we have. And yet, ironically, it's also the resource we waste most casually. We don't throw money away as carelessly as we throw away time. If someone handed you $100, you wouldn't set it on fire for no reason. But when we have a free hour, or a free afternoon, how often do we squander it with meaningless distractions? We scroll endlessly, we drift without aim, we busy ourselves with trivial tasks that feel urgent but achieve nothing. The tragedy is that we don't feel the loss in the moment. A wasted hour doesn't scream at us. It doesn't send a bill in the mail. It disappears quietly, unnoticed, and because of that, we underestimate its cost. The real cost of wasted time isn't the hour itself, it's the opportunity you traded for it. That hour could have been used to read, to learn, to build, to strengthen your body, to deepen a relationship, to move one step closer to a goal. Instead, it vanishes into the void, and you're left no different, sometimes worse, than before. Multiply that by days, by months, by years. And what you have is not just wasted time, but wasted potential. And potential, once squandered, becomes regret. This is where the psychological dimension becomes clear. Human beings are meaning-seeking creatures. We aren't fulfilled by comfort alone. Comfort is necessary, but it's not enough. What we truly crave is progress, growth, the sense that we are moving towards something greater. And growth requires disciplined use of time. Every time you choose distraction over discipline, you aren't just wasting minutes, you are cutting off a small piece of your future self. You are preventing the person you could become from ever existing. That is the true cost of wasting time. Philosophically, you could say that time is the canvas on which life is painted. Each day is a stroke of the brush. If you use it with care, with vision, the painting becomes something beautiful, something worth remembering. But if you waste your days, if you let them pass without direction, the canvas fills with random marks and empty space. At the end of your life, you'll look back, and what you'll see isn't a masterpiece, it's an unfinished sketch. That realization, for many people, is unbearable. This is why urgency matters. Not the panic-driven urgency of rushing through life, but the deeper recognition that time is finite. You don't have forever. People live as if tomorrow is guaranteed, as if they can start next week, next year, when the conditions are perfect. But perfection never arrives. Life is always messy, always uncertain. Waiting for the perfect moment to act is just another way of wasting the moment you have now. The Stoics understood this. They spoke often about time's memento mori, times remember that you will die. Not to depress you, but to awaken you. To remind you that every day matters because the number of your days is limited, and none of us know the total. When you keep this reality in mind, wasting time no longer feels harmless. It feels costly, even tragic, because each wasted day is one less day to build the life you were meant to live. But here's the hopeful side. Time wasted in the past doesn't have to define the future. You can't get back yesterday, but you can redeem today. You can begin, in this very moment, to treat your time as the precious resource it is. And when you start doing that, you begin to notice changes quickly. You feel stronger because you're no longer at the mercy of distraction. You feel more alive because your days are filled with intention instead of drift. You begin to see progress, however small, and progress is what keeps us moving forward. So the choice is always before you. On one side, distraction, delay, and eventual regret. On the other, discipline, growth, and the fulfillment of your potential. The difference doesn't lie in years, it lies in the decision you make about this hour, this day. That's where destiny is shaped, not in the distant future, but in the daily use of time. The cost of wasting time is not simply the hours you lose, it is the life you never get to live. And if you carry that truth with you, if you let it settle deep into your mind, it will change the way you treat each day. Because time isn't just passing, it's you passing. And the question is, what will you do that the time remains?
One of the most insidious aspects of wasting time is that its consequences don't announce themselves immediately. If you skip a workout today, nothing dramatic happens. If you avoid the book you meant to read, you won't feel dumber tomorrow. If you ignore a project, your life doesn't collapse instantly, and because the cost of wasted time is delayed, we trick ourselves into thinking it doesn't matter. We imagine that a little laziness here, a little distraction there, is harmless. But what actually happens is far more dangerous. Small wastes of time accumulate, and they accumulate silently. It's a lot like neglecting your health. You don't become overweight overnight. You get there through hundreds of unnoticed decisions, skipping one meal's worth of discipline, indulging in one small excuse after another. The body keeps score, and in the same way, time keeps score too. Every wasted day adds to the weight you'll carry in the future, not on your body, but in your soul. Psychologically, human beings are wired to avoid immediate pain and seek immediate pleasure. That's why scrolling on a phone, watching meaningless videos, or filling your day with distractions feels so easy. It relieves the discomfort of effort. But what we often forget is that deferred pain is not erased pain. It is multiplied pain. Every comfort-based decision you make now creates discomfort later, only magnified by regret. The thing about regret is that it doesn't just sting, it haunts. It sits in the back of your mind, whispering reminders of what you could have been, of what you could have done, if only you had taken time seriously. Think of it this way: life doesn't punish you all at once. It punishes you slowly. If you waste time for a week, you'll hardly notice. If you waste time for a year, you'll feel stuck, restless, perhaps anxious. But waste time for a decade, and you will wake up one day with a very heavy realization that the person you've become is far smaller than the person you were capable of becoming. That realization, for many, is unbearable. And the cruel part is that by the time you feel its full weight, much of the damage cannot be undone. You can't relive your 20s or 30s or 40s. Once those chapters close, they're sealed. This is why regret is such a central theme in psychology and philosophy alike. Regret isn't just sadness, it's an existential wound. It's the awareness of wasted possibility. Kierkegaard once said that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. The problem is, by the time we look backwards, the wasted time is already beyond repair. That's why people in their final years often speak not of the things they did wrong, but of the time they squandered. It wasn't the mistakes that broke them. It was the hours they let slip through their fingers. Hours that could have been turned into progress, growth, or love. And here's the psychological paradox. Regret is preventable, but only if you act before it arrives. You can't erase regret once it has fully formed, but you can outpace it by aligning your present actions with your highest values. That's why urgency matters so much. Not panic, not rushing, but urgency, the sober realization that today matters, and the way you use it determines whether your future self thanks you or curses you. Another way to think about it is that time is like a debt system. Every hour you waste is like borrowing against your future. You're saying, I'll let my future self pay the price, but interest accumulates, just like with financial debt. And the currency you end up paying with is fulfillment, joy, and peace of mind. The more you waste, the more debt piles up, and one day it comes due in the form of deep dissatisfaction with who you've become. Philosophically, this accumulation of wasted time ties into the broader idea of responsibility. Your life isn't just a random series of events. It's a story being written by your choices. Every page matters. And if you neglect those pages, if you treat them carelessly, then by the time you reach the later chapters, the story becomes incoherent, filled with gaps and wasted potential. That's when people start asking questions like, what was it all for? Or how did I end up here? The answer is almost always the same. They wasted the small moments, believing they didn't matter, and those small moments compounded into a life they didn't want. But there's a way out, and it begins with a radical shift in perspective. Instead of seeing time as something to kill, start seeing it as something to cultivate. Treat every hour as a seed. If you plant it with care, it grows into something real: skill, wisdom, strength, connection. If you throw it away, it rots. Over time, the difference between a person who plants their hours and a person who wastes them becomes enormous. One reaps a harvest of meaning, the other faces the famine of regret. So, the challenge is simple but not easy. Stop outsourcing your responsibility to the future. Stop telling yourself that tomorrow will somehow fix today's negligence. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, and even if it arrives, it will arrive weakened by the time you waste it. Choose instead to live in such a way that your future self is relieved, grateful, even proud of the person you are right now. That's how you break the cycle of regret before it has the chance to consume you. Because in the end, the greatest tragedy is not death, it's reaching the end of life and realizing you never really lived.